Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Rochester. For more than 150 years, ours has been a congregation of open minds and loving hearts, celebrating many sources of wisdom and many spiritual paths. Your faith, your doubts, your questions, your hopes for our world, and your story are welcome here. We hope you stay connected in the summer of both and, continuing our online opportunities for coffee hour and, of course, services, which will happen for the long term, even as we start regathering in person. As well as expanding opportunities for in-person gatherings and small groups. So you can find the most recent guidelines on our website or in your e-news, or contact the office if you'd like to get connected. We hope you find some way to stay connected. Later this summer, at the end of this month into early July, we'll be updating those guidelines and have possible plans for moving towards in-person services with limited capacity, maybe mid or late summer. We're finalizing that in the next few weeks, so please stay in touch for any updates through your e-news or the website as well. We look forward to the summer of both and continuing our commitment to inclusion and accessibility online, even as we begin gathering more in person as well. More to come on that. And a thank you to Derek Robertson, our guest preacher, not really a guest, he's in-house here, part of our staff. Derek is our coordinator of youth programs, as well as having a strong history in transcendentalism and Nathaniel Hawthorne in his studies as well. He helps lead our youth on our pilgrimage to Boston every few years, and is planning to help lead our adults on a pilgrimage to Boston next August. You can stay in touch and watch for information about that as well. Thank you, Derek, for offering a reflection on spiritual ancestry for our service today. And our offering will go to support this church, our mission and vision, including half for our Human Needs Fund, which provides financial emergency assistance to members and friends. Thank you for your generosity. Finally, I want to invite you and encourage you to join us next week for a special service. It's at a different time. It's not on our YouTube channel. The link will be on Facebook. It'll also be in our e-news and online. We'll be joining with thousands of Unitarian Universalists across the country for the National General Assembly, which happens every June. And of course, worship this year, like most years, but is online. It's a live service. It'll be at 11 o'clock Central Time next Sunday. So find the link in your e-news or contact the office. It'll be on Facebook as well, as I mentioned. So please join thousands of other Unitarian Universalists from across the country for Sunday, June 27th service. Finally, in the words of the Reverend Eliza Tupper Wilkes, minister of this church in the 1870s, may our faith in humanity and our message of hope and good cheer light our way. It's good to be together.
We have a special announcement. So, if you are watching this on June 20th, when this comes out, next Saturday, June 26th, marks the 160th anniversary of Henry David Thoreau's stay in Red Wing, Minnesota. So, to commemorate that anniversary, if you would like to meet up with us in Red Wing at 10 a.m. at the trailhead of Barn Bluff, we'll go on a little hike for the bluff there that he loved so much. We're going to tell stories of Thoreau's time here in Minnesota, why he came out here. And for those of you who either can't attend or are learning about this after the fact, we're going to try and post a video of the hike as well that you can watch at a later time. Thank you.
This is the Unitarian Universalist Church. This is the church of the Flaming Chalice. This is the church of the open mind. This is the church of the loving heart, where friends come together and share.
This time of year, when we talk about Hanukkah, we hear the word miracle a lot. And oftentimes we think, well, there's nothing that's a miracle anymore. But many of us, well, me for one, believes that there are miracles in everyday things. Miracles Everywhere by Kate Coombs, art by Carme Lemonskates, inspired by the words of Walt Whitman. As to me, I know of nothing else but miracles. Whether I walk the streets of Manhattan or dart my sight over the roofs of houses toward the sky, or wade with naked feet along the beach, just in the edge of the water, or stand under trees in the woods, or talk by day with anyone I love, or sit at the table at dinner with the rest, or watch honeybees busy around the hive of a summer forenoon, or animals feeding in the fields, or birds, or the wonderfulness of insects in the air, or the wonderfulness of the sundown, or of stars shining so quiet and bright, or the exquisite, delicate, thin curve of the new moon in the spring. To me, every hour of the light and the dark is a miracle, because everything is miraculous. This book also reminds me a lot of Peter Mayer's song Holy Now, about how really, if you look around, there are miracles in everyday things.
I invite you to take a deep breath. Center down wherever you are. Feel below you the earth and its ancient turning, above you the sky and the stars shining with ancient light, holding you in this space right now, this breath right here. Know that in this house you are named, you are known as beloved, as sacred. I invite you into this time of meditation, this time of prayer, first by sharing silence together. Spirit of life and source of love, God of 1,000 names and beyond all naming, in the deep growth and sunshine of summer, help us remember our hearts too can shine and our souls with kindness, compassion, justice, love. Help us reach out to those around us. And in this re-emerging, relocating, reimagining sort of world, may we bring with us as much grace and compassion and kindness and understanding as we can to build the world that we all need and all deserve. We hold in our hearts this day all those who suffer in mind, in body, or spirit. I invite you to bring the names you're holding in your own heart in joy, sorrow, celebration, concern, and silently or aloud now in this time to speak their names. For all those names spoken and unspoken, may we be forever grateful for the fabric of love and life that weaves us together. May those threads hold us in love and strength. These words of meditation come from Wayne Arneson. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. Amen.
An excerpt from Nathaniel Hawthorne's journal, dated October 14th, 1837, when he climbed Brown's Hill. The prospect from the hill is wide and interesting, but methinks it is pleasanter in the more immediate vicinity of the hill than miles away. It is agreeable to look down at the square patches of cornfield, or of potato ground, or of cabbages still green, or of beets looking red. All of man's farm, in short, each portion of which he considers separately so important, will you take in the whole at a glance, than to cast your eye over so many different establishments at once, and rapidly compare them. Here's a house and gentility which shadow old yellow-leaved elms hanging around it. There's a new little white dwelling, there an old farmhouse, to see the barns and sheds, and all the outhouses clustered together, to comprehend the oneness and exclusiveness of what constitutes the peculiarity of each of so many establishments, and to have in your mind a multitude of them, each of which is the most important part of the world to those who live in it. This really enlarges the mind, and you can come down the hill somewhat wiser than you go up. Remember, by Joy Harjo. Remember the sky that you were born under. Know each of the stars' stories. Remember the moon. Know who she is. Remember the sun's birth at dawn. That is the strongest point of time. Remember at sundown, and the giving away tonight. Remember your birth, how your mother struggled to give you form and breath. You are the evidence of her life and her mother's and hers. Remember your father. He is your life also. Remember the earth whose skin you are. Red earth, black earth, yellow earth, white earth, brown earth. We are earth. Remember the plants, trees, animal life who all have their tribes, their families, their histories too. Talk to them. Listen to them. They are alive poems. Remember the wind. Remember her voice. She knows the origin of this universe. Remember you are all people and all people are you. Remember you are this universe and this universe is you. Remember all is in motion, growing is you. Remember the language comes from this. Remember the dance language is. That is life. Remember.
My first lesson in existential angst came when I was a child and watched the classic Disney animated movie Alice in Wonderland. In the film, Alice is horribly lost in Wonderland and sees floating through the sky letters made of smoke. She follows those letters and discovers a caterpillar sitting on a mushroom, smoking a hookah, reciting vowels of the alphabet in no particular order. Everyday things. Upon seeing her, the caterpillar leans forward and asks, "Who are you?" This is a perfectly reasonable question upon first meeting somebody. Alice's response, though, isn't so reasonable. She says, "I hardly know, sir, just at present. At least I know who I was when I got up this morning, but I think I must have changed several times since then." This answer did not sit well with me. How could you not know who you are? Why not simply tell the caterpillar your name and be done with it? Apparently the caterpillar agreed with me, and so he replied, "What do you mean by that? Explain yourself." To which Alice replies, "I can't explain myself. I'm afraid because I'm not myself. You see?" Well, I didn't see, and neither did the caterpillar. The caterpillar simply says, "I don't see. Who are you?" And we have returned full circle. This question is not resolved. Alice still does not know who she is, and neither do we. And I, being the type of person I am, I asked myself that same question. Who am I? What is it to be me? And like Alice, I was forced to admit, and must continually admit, I hardly know just at present. Eventually, as I aged, my fascination with Alice and the caterpillar waned just a little bit. But my fascination around that question did not. If anything, it grew, and eventually I found a kindred spirit who spent most of his life trying to uncover the human heart in order to answer that question. So Nathaniel Hawthorne spent his life as an observer and a listener to others. He was frequently in crowds, he was always at social gatherings, but when he was, he found a corner, and he sat in the corner and listened. When others would talk, he kept to himself. So on the day of his funeral, his neighbor and sometimes friend, Ralph Waldo Emerson, reflected, "I have felt sure of him in his neighborhood and in his necessities of sympathy and intelligence that I could well wait his time and might one day conquer a friendship. It would have been a happiness, doubtless, to both of us to have come into habits of unreserved intercourse. It was easy to talk with him. There were no barriers, only he said so little that I talked too much. Now it appears that I waited too long." For one so quiet that none of his neighbors truly knew his mind, he left a trove of journals and writings that illuminate his thoughts on that question of identity and his answers are equal parts perplexing and inspiring, but in either case, ground us to life and the lives that keep us rooted. At the heart of all that Hawthorne wrote is the thought that we need connection. Like all the transcendentalists around him, he keenly felt the need for self-improvement and understanding, but unlike his neighbors who found that understanding through self-reflection and going out into nature, he was more willing to say you find that understanding in community with others. So, he wrote a story called The Man of Adamant, and in that story, a man named Richard decides to leave his home and go and live out in the forest to figure out who he is and what he stands for. Sounds oddly familiar. Now, this man must have been good or something because the heavens decide to intervene and an angel appears to him. The angel tells him to leave his seclusion, leave his study in nature, and go back to town. Go and live among his community because, as the angel says, they have need of thee, and thou has 100-fold need of them. Unfortunately, he ignores the angel's warning, moves into a cave, where first his heart petrifies, and then the rest of him turns to stone. This need for others, this need for community is central because without others, our heart solidifies. Without the challenge and comfort of someone else, our heart caves in on itself and we become hard-hearted, closed off, unfeeling. But it is the close connection with others that can literally draw us out of ourselves. We know this, we feel this. When we find the right group of people, when we find our tribe, we feel drawn out of ourselves, like we can be ourselves for the first time. As Hawthorne wrote in a letter to his wife, "How little did I know what it is to be mingled with another's being. Thou hast revealed me to myself. For without thy aid, my best knowledge of myself would have been merely to know my own shadow, to watch it flickering on the wall, and mistake its fantasies for my own real actions. Indeed, we are all but shadows. We are not endowed with real life, and all that seems most real to us is but the thinnest substance of a dream till the heart is touched." But we cannot touch our own heart. No amount of time spent in meditation, isolation, or self-reflective prayer can lead us to ourselves. Only someone capable of touching the heart has the power to draw us out of ourselves and show us who we are. As one of Hawthorne's narrators put it, I always live in others' lives. When I live in a community, that community shows me who I am because I invest myself in that community. If I had no care or concern for that group of people, I would not be putting myself into it, so anything that community does would have a minimal impact on me and who I am. But I care for my community. I pour myself into it, my time, my talents, all of my soul is put into community. And as doing that, it becomes mingled with the lives of others who do the same. In fact, to live in general is to live in the lives of others, to be involved with them, to be invested in them. As Hawthorne put it as he looked over the countryside from atop Brown's Hill, it is to have in your mind a multitude. Everybody is in everybody. So when I ask myself who I am, it is always tinged with the nature of the communities in which I am a part. For I live in their lives and they are me. And just like the man of adamant, my community might have a need of me, but I have 100-fold need of them. Because there are hundreds of souls in that community showing me who I am. And by drawing different aspects out of me, that community shows me to myself. And here we must pause and breathe and realize that the lives all around us are us, but just like individuals in our community don't necessarily need to be conscious of our interaction to have effects on us, as Hawthorne points out, they don't even need to be alive. So imagine yourself on a beautiful spring day, walking through town on your way to the home of the person that you hope will this day consent to marry you. This is an individual that at first sight you fell hard for. Imagine the way that your heart beats when they look at you. Think of the love letters that you wrote to this person. Imagine that this is the day you are going to tell them your feelings and your intentions and hope they consent to spend the rest of their life with you. And this is the day to do it. It is spring, the sun is shining, the earth is blooming, warmth suffuses everything. Now imagine that right before you arrive at this house, you take a small detour to the cemetery that happens to be right next door to their house. You make your way to the oldest part of the cemetery, where is buried your great-great-great-grandfather, who is responsible for sending nearly 24 people to their gallows for crimes they didn't commit. And while you're at that sunken grave, you're reminded of that ancestor's father, who was a persecutor of religious minorities. And as you're thinking about these two men, your ancestors, you wonder how much of their cruelty lives in you. And you wonder if this person you're about to ask to marry you realizes that. This is the mind of Nathaniel Hawthorne, and it is in fact what he did. The past and the lives of those inhabiting it were so much alive for Hawthorne and in Hawthorne that he wrote about those two ancestors. The figure of my first ancestor was present to my boyish imagination. As far back as I can remember, it still haunts me and induces a sort of home feeling with the past. He had all the puritanic traits, both good and evil, a bitter persecutor of the Quakers. His son, too, inherited that persecuting spirit and made himself so conspicuous in the martyrdom of the witches that their blood may fairly be said to have left a stain upon him. And I know not whether these ancestors of mine bethought themselves to repent and ask pardon of heaven for their cruelty. At all events, I, as the present writer, as their representative, hereby take shame upon myself for their sakes. Why do this? Hawthorne, we might say, you're not responsible for the actions of your ancestors. Their cruelty is their crime, not yours. But this misses what Hawthorne is saying. He's not saying he's taking responsibility for what they did. He's taking their shame. I think there's a strong impulse to immediately distance ourselves from anything in our communities or our past that we do not agree with or that we find unsavory. We are quick, especially when it comes to people of the past, to create a line of demarcation of us versus them. We are the enlightened, they are the uneducated, the uncivilized, the uncultured. They were wrong, we are right. We find ourselves on the right side of history. As a result, we have nothing to do with them, and the past becomes regretful, but something to be left in the past. But the past never stays there. Grievances, pain, hurt always resurface if left unresolved. The line of thinking of us versus them is great in making ourselves feel good, but it does nothing when it comes to solving any problems. If the problems we see are theirs, we obviously don't need to worry about it. And we can see this playing out in the news, even today. Yes, my family and community, they were racists. They did some horrible, horrible things. But why should I have to pay for what they have done? Yes, my city is homophobic, but why should I have to speak up against something the politicians have done? By thinking this way of trying to separate ourselves from our history, our stories, and our community, nothing is fixed, nothing is resolved, and tensions and tempers increase. So Hawthorne took a different tact. He took on himself their shame. And because I know that can be a loaded word, let's restate it. He owned his connection to his ancestors. He entangled himself in their lives, and as their lives were entangled in his well before he was born. Any advantage that he enjoyed, he realized, was bought at the price of their goodness and their cruelty. He acknowledged that in his life and strove to rectify their mistakes. Or as he put it another way, their cruelty, their lives, their legends that prolong itself from an epoch now gray in the past down into our broad daylight. It's not nearly enough to study history. That history must be claimed and lived because it suffuses us. It is all around us already. It is our daylight. And if we can't recognize it, it's just going to play out over and over again. So Hawthorne took his family's cruelty, their shame, upon himself to break the cycle of cruelty. He inoculated himself against cruelty by taking that shame. And ironically, that became one of the reasons why he was ostracized in his life. In the lead up to the Civil War, he watched helplessly as his neighbors became more and more cruel. Warmongering and bloodthirst were tearing through Concord and through New England. It got so bad that even Emerson called for the slaughter of human beings, and the cost of the annihilation of human life, he said, was overpaid in the vistas it opens of eternal life and eternal law. Hawthorne opposed this language. He opposed this cruelty that could so eagerly desire the death of another human. And as a result, his neighbors were convinced that his sympathies lied with slavers. In an environment that increasingly became fixated on cruelty, Hawthorne found himself an outsider. So when I ask who I am, it is colored with the knowledge that I too come from a long history, maybe not of cruelty, but of patriarchy and men who would not cede any argument. And that history, that story has expectations for me that if I am not careful, if I don't, as Hawthorne says, take their shame and inoculate myself against it, because patriarchy is so prevalent, it would be too easy to slip into that particular legend. But it doesn't always have to be shame that we take. Hawthorne also recognizes there's goodness in his ancestors. So if you travel an hour east from here, cross over into La Crosse, follow Rose Street south, you'll come to Mormon Coulee Road. And it was this area that my so many great-grandfathers back settled, at least temporarily, to harvest lumber to build the city of Nauvoo, Illinois, a thriving community of Mormons. This was a man who left his home back east to travel to Wisconsin, a place he'd never been, to cut trees in a wilderness because his faith and his community asked it of him. And I ask myself, who am I? It's going to have echoes of that commitment and that faith in it. Am I as committed to my communities as he? His life and example are alive in me. I enter into his story, and I hope he pulls aspects of myself out and shows me to myself. So at the end of the day, as we study the stories of the past, invest ourselves in those stories and allow the hopes and dreams of those that came before to enter into our lived experience and forge a new community, the natural consequence is the intertwining of lives, past and present and to come. In this respect, we can become, as the hymn states, our grandmother's prayers, and our grandfather's dreamings, the breath of our ancestors. Their struggles, their frailties, their hopes, prayers, dreams, their breath and their very lives become embodied in us. I am confronted by stories constantly. The stories of the lives of my family and my community are always before me, shedding light on my actions and inviting me to come out of myself. Hawthorne invites us to see those lives, like the lives of his community he saw when he climbed the hill, as intertwined and living in one another. To stay aloof and apart is to remain lost and separate. We must take our place in the community, in the stories and lives that permeate that community. We must live with, that is to say, we must live in the lives all around us, the lives that came before us and the lives that will come after us, if those lives, or ourselves for that matter, are ever going to become realized. Because, and this we must remember, you are all people, and all people are you. So in the coming days and the coming weeks, may we see the lives around us. May we open our eyes to those lives, past and present, that are around us and often unrecognizable, just like light at noon, so that we, maybe for the first time, can see ourselves. May it be so.